Hello everyone, this is Dennis Caye, your Ambergris Key real estate investment expert. I've been featured on House Hunters International, HGTV, as well as Live Here Buy This and numerous investment podcasts. And today I'm going to present to you information regarding buying, owning, and investing in property in Belize using your money in your self-directed IRA accounts or self-directed 401ks. Now this is part 2 of a series. And so if you missed part 1, I'm just going to take 30 to 60 seconds, and briefly cover what is in part 1. First of all, we talked about self-directed IRAs. What they are a government incentive to get you to put away money and invest money for your retirement. And you can do that in several different ways. One way is by investing in real estate. We talked about, those properties that are allowable, such as single-family homes, apartment buildings, commercial spaces, vacant land, syndications, and whatnot. You can buy, sell, rent, sell with owner carry financing, those types of properties. And we also talked about those properties that are not allowable, such as your personal family home and any property that you might want for personal use before your retirement. Those are not allowed and are illegal. Then we went through a couple different scenarios regarding investing in Belize using self-directed IRAs. We talked about things that are open to accredited investors, such as real estate syndications. We talked about rental property, vacant land investments, and very importantly, selling with owner carry or seller financing. So if you'd like more information on all of that, please go back and watch part 1, because I specifically talk about something called insider trading, legal insider trading, as it applies to real estate in Belize. I think you'll find that very eye-opening. And finally, we talked about the 7 easy steps on how to do all this: open and fund the IRA, locate the property, some of the paperwork that you need to fill out. Very, very easy stuff, not complicated at all, to finally then own a property using your IRA. Now, in this webinar, we're going to talk about what comes after the 3 next steps we talked about in part 1. So you've identified a property that you would like to hold in your IRA. You found the perfect investment for you. Now, what are the next steps? All right, well, here we go. First of all, you have to understand the differences on how to take title, especially when you're buying an investment property. So first of all, let's talk about titles in Belize. In Belize, the government issues a title called a land certificate. Now this is a fee simple title. I'm going to show you a picture here of an actual land certificate. This is one of my clients. This is for parcel number 80, I think it's 8211. Can't quite read it here. It is, what this is each parcel of land, whether it's an island, a vacant land parcel, a single family home, each parcel of land is given a parcel number that is unique to itself. So for instance, I think this is 8211 or 8311. There are no other parcels in the country with this exact 4-digit number of being Block 7 registered to San Pedro. This is a 1-page document that you get when you own property in Belize. Now, if you were to own a condo in Belize, the condo could have its own parcel number or its own a condo number. All right, so there's a little bit of difference here with condos, but for vacant land, homes that sit on its own properties, things like this, they have their own unique parcel numbers, and you can choose to take ownership of your land certificate in different ways. Now, this particular owner chose to take ownership in their personal names, which is fine. So you would see your own personal name on the land certificate along with your address. However, there are different ways to hold title. Now, here are some of the different ways. Your personal name or names. So if you're a single owner, you could have your own name on the title, just you yourself. If you're married, you could have you and your mate on there. Or if you have a business partner, you could have your name and your business partner's name on the title. I've seen where parents have their names and their children's names on the title. So that's certainly allowable and doable. It does come with its own drawbacks, but we'll get into those later in a bit. Another way to hold title is through using a registered U.S. company or a Canadian company. For instance, an LLC. If you're an American, you might be familiar with owning property in an LLC. Certainly easy to do. Comes with many, many advantages depending on where the LLC is registered, which state, and depending on what type of property you're owning with it. Now in Belize, you also have some different options to hold title. You can form a Belizean Chapter 250 corporation, which comes with some benefits. I certainly hold many of my properties in Belizean Chapter 250 Corps. Or the last line here on the slide is very key to many of my listeners. Owning property or holding title in an international business company, or IBC. And if you've listened to my presentations before, you know I talk extensively on IBCs because there are many, many benefits to holding property in Belize using an IBC. First of all, let's talk about the different pros and cons of holding title, for instance, in your personal name or names. This is certainly easy to do. You come down to Belize, you find a property, you take title, you put that title in your personal name, all right? It's clean, it's simple, easy to do, right? No problems at all, right? Well, for the most part, until you go to do something with that property that requires adding an owner or taking an owner away. As an example, let's say you and your business partner come to Belize and you buy a piece of land, so each of you own it jointly and both of your names are on the title. What happens when one partner wants to buy out the other partner? Should be a pretty simple thing, right? Maybe you paid $100,000 for the property, you each put up 50, and now it's a couple years down the road and one partner wants to cash out. One partner does not want to sell, but he wants to keep the property and develop it. So now you have a partner that wants to be bought out and move on with his life. Well, if you have the title owned jointly with those names on the land certificate, now you have the problem of removing a partner. So one partner says, okay, give me 75 grand and I'll walk away. Well, that's fine, but now the title has to make its way again through the lands department in Belmopan, which is the capital of Belize, and now the title is now changing hands. It's going from two partners down to one. Maybe the one partner is now adding a couple other business partners. Each time the land certificate gets passed through the lands department, stamp tax on the value of the property has to be paid again. So let's say that the property is now valued at $150,000. Well, now there's approximately $7,500 of stamp tax that needs to get paid again to the lands department because now the title is changing hands. All right, so you have to think about stamp duty, and also just the ease with which you would like to transfer title could become an issue. For example, let's say you have mom and dad that own this property and they want to change it to over or pass it along to the kids or grandkids. Well, again, when mom and dad or grandma and grandpa want to gift or transfer this property to a family member, now the property has to make its way through lands department again, stamp taxes owed, and it can be very, very costly. All right, so what can you do instead of taking title in your personal names? Well, this applies whether or not you're buying with an IRA or your personal funds or any other types of funds, okay? You could choose to form an LLC. I've had some clients in the United States form an LLC strictly for the purpose of holding property in Belize. All right, it's easy to do, not too difficult, and we can certainly work with those. Or, as I mentioned, form a Belizean Chapter 250 Corp or an IBC, which offers many, many benefits, which I'll get into now. An IBC is this. It's an international business company, much like an LLC in the States. So it's a very, very simple corporation. They can be formed in 48 hours once you have all the necessary paperwork into your local custodian in Belize. And an IBC, that acronym stands for International Business Company. So in Belize, a Belizean IBC cannot hold title. It's against the law. It has to be an international company. So a non-Belizean company can hold title. So for that, we look to neighboring countries such as the British Virgin Islands, Panama, Costa Rica, and what we find that works very good in Belize are Anguillan IBC. So the country of Anguilla, you can set up a very, very simple company in Anguilla that can then legally hold property in Belize. Now, you might think this sounds a little complicated. It's not, all right? Imagine this. You fill out a 3-page form giving your details of why you want to own this company, why you want to form this company, what it's going to be used for, and in 48 hours and $1,500 later, you have yourself a corporation. All right, very, very simple. Now, What this allows you to do then is when you go to hold title, you hold title with the IBC. All right, so the IBC is owned by you. You are the sole owner, or you and your wife, or you and your business partners. All right, so you own this corporation and now you hold title to it. Now, what this does for you are several key things. Notice on this slide, first of all, it can help reduce or eliminate the duplication of stamp taxes. Here's an example of how this works. Okay, so you and your, let's see, wife purchase a property and it's valued at now $200,000, and you go to transfer it to the kids. Okay, now what you're going to transfer to the kids is not the title, all right, but rather the IBC or the company that holds title. So you're simply going to turn over your ownership from you and your wife to your kids or to your grandkids. All right, the title has not transferred hands. The title is still in the name of the corporation, the IBC. So you have just saved or eliminated or reduced the stamp tax now that is owed the Belize government, because title is not passing through the lands department again. Now, this is true if it's a business partner selling or taking on an additional business partner, or even if you're just selling the property now to a third-party buyer because now you want to cash out on your investment and move on. Another thing this does is it provides asset protection. When you have your ownership of your Belize property in an IBC, it's not in your personal names. So let's say there's some frivolous lawsuit that gets lodged against you in the United States or Canada, and they come after you personally and all of your assets. Well, you have this asset in Belize shielded legally in a foreign corporation, right? So it makes it very difficult for them to have access to that. Now, this is also very important when it comes to owning property in Belize and you decide to develop it. As an example, let's say you bought a couple pieces of vacant land and now you decide to build a cafe, a beach bar, a boutique resort, a golf cart rental company, whatever it is, but you have a little commercial enterprise on your property. If something happens on that property, someone gets hurt, someone gets killed, something goes wrong, and someone decides to bring up a lawsuit against you, all right, then all of your assets are at risk. All of the assets that you own in your personal names are at risk. However, if you take that entity and you put it into an IBC or an LLC or some type of corporation, then when you're being sued, only your assets that you hold in that IBC are at risk. So let's say you own 3 or 4 different properties throughout Belize, all right? The one property a lawsuit is brought up against. The rest, they can't touch, all right? It has nothing to do. So you legally shield yourself from lawsuits, and especially frivolous lawsuits where people are just after money for vindictive purposes or whatever, all right? So very, very good reasons to hold property in an IBC. This is just a short list. There are many more, but these are just the key ones. How do you form an IBC? It's very, very simple. You have about a 3 or 4 page document. Here is page 1 of an Anguilla IBC application form. So you propose the name of the company. I just put Ambergris Caye Holdings here as an example. Pick a couple other names in case that name that you like is taken. I prefer to use a different company names depending on the reasons I'm forming them for. So if it's a single IBC to hold a single piece of property, I might incorporate the parcel number into that name. Doesn't matter. Intended activities of the IBC is land ownership, and then I just go ahead and fill it out as far as how I want my shares allocated. Your name's going to be on there, your address, things like that. And then, very importantly, there's a section 7 here regarding due diligence. Now, these 4 things are crucial when you go to own property in Belize, and especially if you want to take advantage of an IBC. So number 1, notarized copy of your passport. The Lands Department now requires foreigners to have a passport when they're buying or selling property in Belize. It's a way they can guarantee the buyer and the seller and back up the property. So in Belize, the government actually guarantees the title. All right, so there's no need for title insurance in Belize. We have it, but I don't think anybody uses it because the government of Belize backs up your rights as property owner. In order to do that, they require a notarized copy of your passport. Now here's points number 2 and 3, which are very important. You need a bank reference letter with a banking institution or credit union that you've had relations with for over 2 years. So what this is, it's a single page letter, and if you would like, email me and I can send you copies of what these letters look like. It's a very, very simple one-page letter. It says, Mr. and Mrs. Smith have been banking with our institution for X number of years. They are in good standing, and we have not had an issue with any of their accounts. Signed by the bank manager. All right, so it doesn't need to entail any details regarding your deposits there or your movement of money. All it has to be is a bank reference letter that you are in good standing with that bank. What this does is it verifies who you are, and it cuts down on any money laundering that unscrupulous individuals might be trying to get away with. The next letter is a character reference letter. So this could be from a lawyer or an accountant. Again, simply a letter stating that this person has worked with you, they know who you are, and they can vouch for your character and professionalism. And then 4, a copy of your utility bill showing your place of residence. So this is what is required when you go to form an IBC to take title to a property in Belize. All right, so what this does then is this sort of comes into play when you go to make a offer on a property in Belize. So we change things up just a bit here when we go to make that offer, especially with IRA purchases, and here's why. The IRA is going to take between 30 to 45 days to process the investment. All right, so by the time you turn in all this information, the IBC is formed, you have your DOI forms turned in. All right, nothing complicated, but again, does take 30 to 45 days to accomplish all that. So what we do is when we find the property that you want to invest in, we write the agreement for sale with the IBC as the seller and your IRA as the property buyer. All right, so what this allows us to do is the IBC is listed as the seller. That allows me, as an agent in Belize, with all of my paperwork already on file with a local custodian, is I get to quickly, within 28 to 48 hours, go ahead and get the IBC underway, get it formed, get it registered, get the shares allocated, everything set, so that I essentially sometimes become the seller of the property, and then the IRA is purchasing the IBC. And what this happens is it works very, very easy, because now your agent forms the IBC, gets it registered. In the meantime, you're getting your notarized copies of your passports, you're getting your bank reference letters, your attorney reference letters, your utility, proof of utilities and everything because of your proof of residence. All that now is finally turned in. At the same time, all of your paperwork now has been created and approved of by your IRA custodian. Then at closing, 30 to 45 days later, at closing, your IBC is given or turned over to your IRA, and the IRA becomes the sole or partial owner of the IBC. The only reason I put partial here is because sometimes a property will be purchased partially with IRA funds, partially with personal funds, or partially through another company. So I say partial owner, but whatever it is the IRA is buying, they get 100% ownership of that portion using the IBC. All right, so IRAs and IBC must-knows. The IBC has an annual registration requirement. So each year, this Anguillan IBC is maintained as a company in both Anguilla, where it's formed and held, and with the government of Belize. This keeps everything legal, everything above board. The registration requirement fee, this can vary depending on the actual nature of the IBC. It can range from anywhere from $600 to $800 a year. That fee must be paid for by the IRA, all right, because it's an expense that is linked to the ownership of the property. Now remember, this ownership in an IBC makes the property much easier to sell and much more valuable on the open market. And this is key because remember, if you're investing money in Belize using your IRA funds, the entire reason you're doing it is for the return on investment, for the financial return. So let's say you have a property that is on the open market for $60,000. If you own this property in an IBC, you are going to save the end buyer $2,500 in stamp tax. All right, as compared to an identical property right next door, also for sale for $60,000, the end buyer of that property, if it's not in an IBC, is going to have to pay the $2,500 in stamp tax. All right, so there are absolute financial benefits that come with owning property in an IBC. All right, before we move on, let's just make note here of one important thing. If you're buying property in Belize using personal funds, then you are 100% at your own personal discretion on how to take title. You can take it with your personal names, LLC, IBC, Belize Chapter 250, a couple other different ways, family trust, whatnot, not a problem. If you are owning property in Belize using money you have in your self-directed IRA or self-directed 401k, then you need some sort of corporate vehicle to take ownership. And to make it easy on you and to make it seamless and very easy to buy and sell, we highly recommend the use of international business companies, specifically Anguillan IBCs. All right, I think I covered most of the questions that have come in over the past week regarding this. I will end this presentation for now. I want to say thank you very much for attending. We appreciate this. Again, many of you are investing in Belize for simply getting some money outside of the United States. You realize that where you have your funds now are not producing the returns that you would like, and you would like some other options. Again, this is what I do for a living. So if you have questions, concerns, comments that you'd like to make, please email me. You probably have my email address, but if you don't, it's denniskii@gmail.com. That's denniskii@gmail.com, and we'll go from there. All right, thanks a lot. This is Dennis Caye, your Ambergris Caye investment expert on the beautiful island of Ambergris Caye, Belize.